Oh. Oh. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gururdevo Maheshwaraha Gurudeva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hari Om and greetings from Cleveland. This morning I was woken up very early. Keyword, woken up, not by choice. And as I was preparing to drive to Cleveland, then Sheila thoughtfully had prepared a bagel for me. And I was driving and I was very sleepy and I was very hungry. So I'm eating this bagel and trying to drive and navigate, and it's falling all over the place. And eventually I get to Cleveland and I have lunch, and then I go to the room that I'm staying in and I just lied down, like coat on, feet hanging over the bed. And the 1 hour I slept felt like 1 minute. But during this time, I had a dream that this bag of chips was open and was falling into my backpack and getting all over my special books. And then I woke up. Here's the connection. When I was growing up and we were studying indigenous culture, this is in history class in middle school and high school, a really lovely point that stuck with me is that in indigenous culture, dreaming is rare. And dreaming is indicative of an unhealthy state of mind. And the reason for that, in indigenous culture, whatever experience you're engaged in, you are to experience that. And that is not to carry on with you to a dream or to another state. I'm sharing this, the dream that I had, because my sleep was not complete, my eating was not complete, so it stayed with me into my dream. And that's not healthy. I should be sleeping. Our samskaras means well done. The vision behind this map, behind these practices, whatever you're engaged in, be there completely. And if you are there completely, your body, mind, and soul, you will feel complete. The samskaras are rites that are to help us our whole life. These rites are about how to change our actions so that this is changing our minds. These rites are interdependent, and that's why the prenatal samskaras, they happen when one is a fetus And those are numbers 1 through 3. The next set of samskaras is when one is a child. And those are samskaras 4 through 9. The third set of samskaras is when one is a youth, and that is 10 through 12. And the final set of samskaras is when one is an adult, and that's 13 through 16. These actions and attitudes span our whole life, and again, all interdependent. When you're a fetus, who's going to facilitate that samskara for you? Naturally, the ones who are caring for you, so it's their samskara also. So all interdependent. Focusing on the adult samskaras, 13 through 16. 13 is vivaha. Vivaha in English, upliftment. And the way that we can practice vivaha from a tactile perspective, the term I gave you yesterday was pratignya purti. Pratignya means to promise, and purti means to fulfill, to complete that promise. This upliftment is to have this vision to keep on integrating yourself, the individual, into a family, into a community, into society. This can't just be words. Remember the difference between living in an ashram and outside of the ashram. In the ashram, there is theory. And outside of the ashram, application. That is the transition from samskara 12 to 13. Being a youth to being an adult, this vision has to be acted upon. This should be one's mission to embrace family, community, and so on. Follow through. Then vivaha is not an event. It's a development that you practice every day. The 14th samskara, Pancha Mahayagnya, 5 great dedications. And I shared a lot from the absolute, from the traditional and tactile. I'm only going to focus on the relative today. What is Pancha Mahayagnya from a relative perspective? It is about reciprocating. How there is dedication to you for you to reciprocate that dedication. So here's a framework for you. How many of you, by a show of hands, were in the Moha Mudgara course with me when we studied Bhajagovindam? Lots here, lots here. Do you remember how I defined bhaja? Bhaja has many meanings. Can you share in the chat? What are some of the meanings for bhaja? Please share. Serve, that's correct. Seek, sing, worship, solid. I'm going to redefine bhaja in 5 ways. Here's what it is, from farthest away to closest. Sing, seek, serve, support, surrender. Sing, seek, serve, support, surrender. Okay. The first dedication, that is from the devas. Nature's forces are dedicated to us. We should be dedicated back by singing. And what this means is, what can you actually do back for the sun? What can you do back for gravity? Can you hug gravity? Can you send gravity a card? What this can look like in our days, before you begin your responsibilities, driving someone to school or running an errand, stand in the front part of your home. It could be your porch, it could be the grass or the driveway or the sidewalk. Fold your hands near your heart. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes and just turn around once. And feel that sun. Feel the wind, feel the gravity. Singing makes sense now. You can't do anything for nature's forces. But still, we should get into the habit like we're doing something for nature's forces. Next, nature's beings. They are dedicated to us. How can we dedicate back? Living in harmony with nature's beings. You should be a net gain to nature. You should not be a cause for a net loss. You can be harmonious or harmful. And really every day we should check, did I help nature more or hurt nature more? That is what I mean by seek. Be intentional about how you're living with nature's forces. Number 3, samaj or society. Society is dedicated to us. They facilitate our living. I talked about the snow plows yesterday. Do you remember? We were talking about how hard those in healthcare have been working here in Cleveland for the past 2 years, how it's harmed their health, their relationships. So society is dedicated to us. How can we dedicate ourselves back? Learn how to drive a snowplow. Volunteer. Volunteer. Every one of us has 168 hours a week. If you volunteer 1% of your time, that's 2 hours a week. That's not singing or seeking, that's serving then, correct? Serve society as a volunteer. And I often think about if 350 million people in America volunteered 2 hours a week, that's 700 million hours, correct? If minimum wage is $10, let's say, that's $7 billion that's infused into the economy that wouldn't be there. And how much did it cost people? 1% of their time. That literally means watching 2 less Netflix shows a week. Number 4, Pitra, our ancestors. They have been dedicated to us because all that we are is because of our ancestors. How we eat, how we dress, and so on. How can we be dedicated back? Support, which means all that you have been taught, teach the next generation. If you know how to cook, teach the next generation. If you know about a certain value, teach the next generation. They don't have to be your biological children. It simply means the next generation so that this lineage continues. And number 5, this is the closest, rishis, our guides. They're dedicated to us. How can we be dedicated back? Surrender, which means live in such a way that you feel free. Free of stress, free of anxiety, free of dejection. This is what our rishis are guiding us to feel, so feel it. This is the relative perspective, and just reminding you of how to engage in this samskara in a tactile way. Can you show me with your hands what you're supposed to do? Yes, when you eat, take 5 small bites. Deva, Bhuta, Samaj, Pitra, Rishi. And then you eat. 13, 14, 15. These are all adult samskaras. 14 is the first you perform for yourself. 15 is the last you perform for yourself. I've shared with all of you that these samskaras have been collated from different sutras and smritis and so on. And so when you study the samskaras, you may find that there's a different order. You may find that there's a different name. Please don't get lost in that. When it comes to matters like karma, which these samskaras are, well done, it is less about the action and more about the attitude. So if you're perturbed by what I'm going to share as 15 now, because you were taught in a different way, fine. Focus on the attitude, not on the technicality. It's very much like puja. All of us would be engaged in puja in a different way, correct? You do this first, I do this last. Do you think that your creator cares? Your creator only cares that you care, not about these formalities. 15 is Vanaprastha. Vanaprastha means Vana. Vana is the jungle, the forest for us in North America. We don't have jungles here. Prastha means to enter, means to establish. So Vanaprastha, to live in the forest. When? For all of our samskaras, we've been assigning ages. Vivaha, around 24. Panchamahayagna, that happens simultaneously. Let's say after your honeymoon. So 24 years and 1 month then, 1 month later. That's how long a honeymoon is supposed to be. So now, Vanaprastha, approximately when you are 48. Everyone's heart palpitations have started. We're not married and you're telling us to engage in Vanaprastha. Let me explain this fully when we get to 16 also, okay? All of the dots have to be connected. Just hold the thought of 48. Another gauge is the day you see the face of your first grandchild. The day you see the face of your first grandchild, whichever comes first, not I'm going to delay everything, whatever comes first. And doesn't this make sense? If I got married at 24, there's a good chance the next generation will be around in that time range then. Why am I saying 48? Because in most workplaces, it will be 60, 65, and so on. Because workplaces typically are not looking at your life holistically. They're typically looking at how much can you give to them. Agreed? But if you think of it practically, we get involved in our families and communities for a long time. And as long as it takes to get in, it's going to take a long time to get out. Visualize this physically. If you go deep into water, let's say 20 feet, you've jumped off a cliff, 20 feet into the water, it's going to take you longer to come up then, correct? Than if you went into water 5 feet. There's so many examples you can use. Just think about habits. If you have a heavy habit, it will take you longer to undo that habit, correct? So at 48, we have to start thinking about this. We have to start acting in this direction from an absolute perspective. If we analyze the 4 stages of life, the first stage of life, when one is a brahmachari, one is investing in dharma. The second stage of life, when one is a grahastha, one is investing in artha. Now, this is the third stage of life, yes? Vanaprastha. So what should one be investing in? Kama. And now you're all thinking, awesome, 48, we should start at 40. But kama does mean desire, but kama of what? Kama for who? That needs to be reflected upon. There is to be a desire, but a desire for the desireless. And I'll share this in a rhyming way. The first stage of our life, we live for me. The second stage of your life, you live for we. Then tell me, the third stage of life, who should you be living for? She, as in the divine. So it's still kama, but kama for kamini, for Devi Lakshmi. Did that work for everyone? I'll share this in a different way. The word sadhu means parakaryam sadnoti iti sadhu. Parakaryam means others' lives or others' work. Sadnoti means to facilitate. So a sadhu, one who is noble, they don't work for themselves, they work for others. Now, I hope you're connecting the dots. Do you remember what I said the training should be between the ages of 48 and 59? Seva. See how you're still living, you're still working, but it's less about you more than ever. It's more about others more than ever. And the final absolute perspective, practicing Vanaprastha means to give up. You have to give up what you've been holding on to so that you can grow up. Imagine my son said, we're never going to give up our baby teeth. They can never grow up then, correct? They'll just not be able to have that physiological strength of an adult. But we're not focusing on outer evolution, we're focusing on inner evolution. To a relative narrative perspective. At a physical level, practicing Vanaprastha means non-indulgence. Non-indulgence. That means all that your senses are engaged in should be less indulgent. You shouldn't use them to try to create joy as much. Eat less pickle. Some of you, where do we go with this? Matters like that. At a mental level, Everyone, please listen carefully. Non-interference. I think this is a significant problem in families, is where one generation is interfering with the next generation. All those in the younger generation, do you agree? Point fingers at the older generation right now. My own kids tell me you should non-interference. So that's at a mental level. At an intellectual level, non-investment. What non-investment means is stop investing in external security. If you keep holding on to external security, you'll never find internal security. And if you're not getting what I'm saying, retire. Retire from your professions. Because if you don't, the social system doesn't work. There are not opportunities for younger people then. Correct? And I don't even mean that in a secular sense. Imagine I never delegated any of my responsibilities. Then there would be less training, less growth for others then, correct? I find that happens so much in sacred institutions too, where those who are older just stay and don't empower the next generation. Have you observed that too? And when our rishis, who are sociologists, when we don't follow this, society starts to fall apart then. To a traditional perspective, how one engages in Vanaprastha is you move from where you are living. If I live in Niagara Falls, everything there is comfortable. I know the roads, I know the people, and so on. But if I move from Niagara Falls, then what happens is my life actually becomes simpler. I don't travel as much. I don't socialize as much. That's what's meant by moving to the jungle, moving to the forest. So this is how this is celebrated in a more traditional sense, in a tactile sense now. Live lightly. Have a light carbon footprint. Be lighthearted. One who lives lightly is ready to let go. They don't carry emotional baggage from this happened to me then, and this is happening to me now, and so on. And though I don't have the time, but this is the last day of our workshop over 2 years. So I'm going to tell you 2 brief stories about how lightly we have to live. Once, Raja Yudhishthira and his brother, Prince Bhima, were sitting together. Gupshup, they were engaging in small talk. And a bhikshu came, someone who was asking for food, for funds. And Raja Yudhishthira was really engaged in that gupshup, in that small talk. So he told this bhikshu, come back tomorrow and I will give to you. And that bhikshu went on his way. And immediately Prince Bhima, and you have to imagine how big he is, he does a full prostration to Raja Yudhishthira. And Raja Yudhishthira is humble. I think we're coming to know that from Bhagavatam. So he's taken aback by this. You know, we're equals. Why are you prostrating? And from the ground, Prince Bhima looks up and says, no, we are not equal. And Raja Yudhishthira asks, why? And Prince Bhima says, because you've conquered death. You know that you're going to be alive tomorrow to give to that bhikshu. Awesome, no? So the next time I ask for dakshina and you say tomorrow, I'll be looking up. And one more narration from the Mahabharata. Karna is known as Dana Vira, the one who's great when it comes to living lightly. He had just trained, and now he was sitting in the sun and massaging his wounds. See, now everyone's into cryotherapy. Back in the day, they had better ways of healing their wounds. And a bhikshu came. And again, you are Danavira, please give me food, please give me funds. And immediately, Prince Karna gave him the bowl that the oil was being held in. Very ornate, very expensive. And that bhikshu was holding it and was appreciative, but then says, in our culture, we don't give with our left hand, we give with our right hand. The emphasis of rightness. And Prince Karna apologizes to that bhikshu, but explains why I gave with my left hand, because the bowl was there, and by the time I transferred it to my right hand, my mind could have changed. So I just gave. And Prince Arjuna shared how chanchala the mind is, correct? That's how we should live lightly, so that people tell stories about you, like we tell stories about Raja Yudhishthira or Karna. Vanaprastha. And now, our final samskara. Number 16, Antyeshti. Antyeshti is made up of two words. Antya. Antya means last, final. Ishti means worship or sacrifice. So Antyeshti, the final sacrifice. Point to me who sacrificed in the final sacrifice. Don't point to your body. Yes, the jiva. That ego sacrifices itself in dedication to the spirit. Now, what age should I assign to this? And I'm going to. 72. Why 72? How many of you are 60 and over by a show of hands? 60 and over. Okay. In our culture, we have a special birthday when you're 60. It's called Shashti, which means 60. Purti, which means completion. Everyone can hear me and see me clearly? Okay. Completing 60 years. Do you know why that's special? Because this is based on the analysis that you will live to 120 years. So Shashti Purti is symbolic for you've lived half your life. Now, is anyone here planning to live to 120? I've been to your homes. I know how we eat together. We are not going to live to 120. Not going to happen. So that's why it's so important to know these samskaras in an adaptive way, correct? More reasonably, let's say the typical person will live to 75. I'm putting in 72 because we're using frameworks of 12 years and 24 years. By the time one is 72, every day after that should just be treated as a bonus. By 72, you should feel like you are dead to the world. And I mean this obviously in a productive way, not in a fatalistic way. Everyone's with me? So you got married at 24, you're a Vanaprastha at 48, you're dead at 72. The ego is dead at 72, okay? Continuing. From an absolute perspective, this body is made up of elements in a micro way. There's some earth, some air, and so on. When this body dies, the micro elements return to the macro elements. There's a common saying, from ashes to ashes, from dust to dust. Where do we come from? Ashes. Where we would go back to? Ashes. We are just changing it, elements to elements. And how this body returns is through fire. In our culture, we burn the body. Why? It is the most complete way for this body to return to the elements. If this body is put in water, it's going to take longer, correct? If this body is put in earth, it's going to take even longer. But the body is burned so that this return to the elements is most complete. And this is why, what color is Bhagavan Shiva? What color is his skin? Anyone? You're all scared now. What do we say? White. His skin is completely white, like snow, like the moon, like jasmine. But sometimes he appears gray. I've seen icons. That grayness is coming from the ash he's wearing, or vibhuti. The idea is that beneath that ash, beneath those elements, is Bhagavan Shiva, or awareness. So in Antyeshti, when the jiva or the ego knows what's beneath that, the spirit. And we all practice this during asana. What is the last asana? Shavasana, yes. And it's like the body dies, but you know all of this, which shows that you are Shiva. Awareness. The people you know who are getting older and dying, do they know all of this? Do they feel all of this? See how powerful knowledge is. It gives you a map. From a relative perspective, when the body is to be burned, someone close to that personality feeds that body. It's called pinda, balls of rice. Toya, that is spoons of water. Why did they do this? It is a message to oneself. The way that this, suppose it's my grandmother, and I'm there, and I have done this for my grandmother, for my dadi. The way that you have fed me, I am now feeding you. But what you have fed me is not rice and water. What you have fed me is values. What you have fed me is culture. And now I'm going to feed others in the same way. So it's a promise that is made between the person who's alive and the person who has died. But the person who's died doesn't know about that promise. So who are you making a promise to? Yourself. Antyeshti is like this cycle is completed of samskaras, but it's before we had our kids, we were performing the samskaras, correct? When Vivek dies, who's going to perform that samskara? My kids, I hope. There's no assurances. And then all of the ashes from that burnt wooden body is put into the water. Why? To create more space. It's India, lots of people there. To show that we have to move on. I find this is to be one of the greatest facets of Sanatana Dharma, is that when someone dies, there's so little externally that's kept of theirs. You move on. Those ashes flow into that water. A river is fresh. And Sri Krishna emphasizes the same, that we should not grieve. When someone we love, when someone we care for dies, obviously we can and will be sad. You can't have breakfast with them anymore. You can't FaceTime them anymore. But grieving is when dharma stops. When you stop following your dharma, that's grief. And Bhagavan Krishna has shared in Bhagavad Gita that one should not grieve. So keep those matters in mind. and I'm going to emphasize that a little bit more. From a traditional perspective, there is too much diversity in how to practice Antyeshti, so I'm not going to even comment on it. Too many differences. My suggestion to all of you, as you're preparing for Antyeshti, we're all reaching 72 fast, everyone, is try to research a pujari who's trained in such philosophy. And if you don't know any pujari who's trained in this, you learn it and you create a school that will train others then. That would be a great service you're offering then, correct? You learn it and that can be your job. What do you do? I teach Antyeshti. They have funeral homes, right? People are trained in that. How come we don't? And don't point fingers to me. What else do you want me to do? I've learned about Vivaha. Now I have to learn about this too. From a tactile perspective, how do we practice Antyeshti? Celebrate. As you get older, as you're preparing for the body to die, but more so the ego, let this be a celebration of life. And when Vivek dies, I'm not going to organize any of this. Someone else will organize it for me. This should be a celebration of our relationship, of our memories. When we have this celebration, then that person's personality continues to live on. The worst kind of death is not medical death or biological death. It is philosophical death when someone is forgotten. Just think of the classroom. Subtle bullying is when someone's ignored, correct? So that's why a celebration is better. There's a seeker who's here with us right now. She and I have been talking about preparing a celebration of life for one of her family members, which makes me very happy that people are shifting away from that which has no meaning and shifting towards that which has meaning. And that is the completion of our samskaras. 8 days, 12 hours, 16 samskaras. Now, I told you that I would do more thinking for you. So here's the final part of our framework. The last 8 right actions, the last 8 right attitudes. 4, number 9, when you are 1 year old, chuda karana, the right action is be fresh. And this will nurture the attitude of purpose. Number 10, when you are 5 years old, akshara abhyasa, the right action, be respectful. And this will nurture the attitude of openness. Number 11, when you are 6 years old, upanayana, be independent. And you will nurture the attitude of clarity. Number 12, when you are 18 years old, samavartana, the right action, be grateful. And this will nurture the attitude of generosity. Number 13, when you are 24 years old, vivaha, be intense. You have to go from dharma to saddharma. You have to refine your vision. And this will nurture resilience. you will become tougher. Number 14, you're still 24 years old and 1 month. 24 years old and 1 month. The right action is be dedicated. And the right attitude will be humility. Number 15, when you are 48 years old. The right action, be simple. From Vivaha to Vanaprastha, simplify. And you will nurture lightness. You'll be lighter physically, mentally, intellectually. And finally, 16, when you are 72 years old. The right action, be surrendering. Surrender all that you have, all that you are. And the attitude that will be nurtured, you will nurture light with a capital L. From humility to lightness to light. Oh. Our final dynamics will be very much intertwined with Antyeshti. And I'm now inviting Nina, who's one of our crew members, who's a great seeker and a great educator. And she's helped me a lot in different ways, but specifically with dynamics. Nina, please facilitate.
Hari Om Vivekji, Hari Om everyone. It is just so lovely to know that there's so many people with Vivekji in person right now experiencing this knowledge series. It's so amazing to see so many seekers from all over the country right now hanging out virtually. We've seen each other every day for the last couple years. And also to know that there's some of you who tuned in who are like joining our community for the very first time. So a really warm welcome for being so open to exploring something new and learning more about why we do what we do. Vivekji had a very sweet introduction, but all the credit goes to Rupa in developing such a comprehensive and loving set of dynamics for this knowledge series. And so because I'm the person who sends all the emails that many of you don't open, just a reminder that what we need for this dynamics is a pencil and a piece of paper. And if you have a pen, that's forgivable, that is okay. But ideally you'll want to use a pencil because you'll have the eraser. But if you have a pen, again, I forgive you, but it was also in the email. Anyway, diving in. So with your piece of paper, whether it's in your notebook or a separate new sheet, I want you to draw a long road, like actually spend some time drawing a road. One end is going to represent where your life began, and the other point is going to represent where you are now. So just take a minute to draw that road. I'm going to turn on some gentle music as we dive into this exercise. Once you have finished drawing the road, I just invite you to look up so I have a sense of where everyone is at. Wonderful. Now on this long road that you, or short road, depending on how old you are, but I won't ask you to hold that up. on this road that you have drawn, I want you to draw an accomplishment of yours, an icon that represents an accomplishment of yours, something that you feel really proud of in your lifetime. And you can represent it, you can draw it in detail, or you can find an icon that reflects this specific accomplishment. No specifications of where on the road you want to draw it. Up to you. You're the creative talent. And I realize it is tough for some of you, as you've shared in the chat. All of you are very accomplished. And if you've drawn something that you've accomplished, now I also want you to draw where you live, your house, somewhere in that road. And maybe sketch out the people who make that house a home. And knowing that some of you are very quick drawers, I want you to draw something you dislike. No specifications. Maybe it's a food. Maybe you can think back to your childhood. What was a food that you really, really hated? Draw that on this road of your life. For me, that was Karela. Don't worry, I love it now. So again, to recap, you have an accomplishment. You have your house and your home. You have a food that you dislike. Jagriti-ji, you can say a mango, but you might be kicked out of the Zoom meeting. And now I want you to draw yourself. And maybe next to your little self-portrait, you can put how old you are, maybe what you do, whether it is a student, maybe you're a householder, maybe you work, maybe all of the above at the same time. And maybe as you're sketching out yourself, think about how much you've changed. Maybe how much your body has changed in the last 2 years. I mean, definitely since young adulthood till now, we have seen changes in our bodies and ourselves. I've started noticing some white hair, but I won't tell you how much. And I invite you to look up as you finish your sketch of wherever you're at, just again, so I know when to keep us moving forward. that I see some beautiful faces looking at me, I want you to take your eraser and I want you to start erasing it all. Start with the beginning of the road, then move to your accomplishment, then erase that food from your childhood you really dislike. Mango, in Dr. Lichi's case. Your home. And then your body, yourself, your age. Maybe that's a good one you can get rid of. And for those of you who are using a pen, I invite you to lightly scribble over it so you can't see anymore. If you have a pencil, use your eraser. Start erasing it. And I want you to pay really close attention to how this feels inside. Oh, you still should, mango's gone. That's the update. The rest of you should still be scribbling and or erasing. Either that or you have a very good eraser. Just one more minute here. Wow, Rita's let everything go. She's all done. She's fully detached. For those who did finish, I want you to type into the chat, how did that feel, erasing everything that you so lovingly wrote down or drew? Gone just like that. Rotiji cheering. Trying to detach. So it's tough. Lovely insights. Mahalakshmi ji. Hammer on the head. Mohamudgara. Sarita ji. I feel like I am no mom. Someone shared that was very thought-provoking. Anvita ji shared bittersweet, liberating. Yes. And then Gita ji shared that she felt one with all. These are all such lovely insights, such special noticings as you erased or scribbled on top of something that you created. And if you had to scribble, turn over the page. If you erased in the middle, I want you to draw a nice big circle and write, who am I? In the middle with a question mark. And you don't have to write anything down other than who am I in this circle. But I do want to nudge you to think, how might you answer this without using your name, your likes, your dislikes, the roles that you fulfill in your family or community, the things you do, your friends. And then I also want you to consider that it took some effort to erase all of that or to scribble all over that. And it really makes me think about what Vivekji shared about Vanaprastha starting earlier than what we typically consider, perhaps, before coming into this knowledge series. It takes time to unlearn. We had a camp several years ago called Unlearning to Learn. it takes time. And we have to start letting go a lot sooner, no matter what age we are. And so that is something to just consider, is like also look at the impressions you've left on the surface of your paper. Sometimes, when you press hard with your pencil, it leaves marks. And then when you erase too, that might also leave marks. So just reflect on these different dimensions in relationship to the samskaras that we culminated with today. And to be respectful of our time, to be mindful of our time. I just want to close this dynamics right here, but I hope you can continue wrestling with that question. Who are you? Who are you without all of these likes, dislikes, even the body, as we were considering in our samskaras? Okay, Vivekji, I think it's time for our dialogue.
What a solid dynamics. All of our dynamics have been solid, as have been those who are facilitating this. So thank you to all of our facilitators. And this is the last portion of our 2-year Samskara workshop. We don't know if we'll be around tomorrow. We definitely don't know if we'll be around next year. And even if we are, if we're going to continue with such workshops. So any questions you have, please use Slido. There's many right now. I'm going to start answering them in a simple way. And if you do have questions, keep populating Slido. Anonymous, are there some samskaras that are more important than others? And if yes, why is that? Samskaras are usually not compared like this. It is a very secular mentality. There are some samskaras that are more comprehensive for sure. Upanayana, Vivaha, and so on. Forcing an answer, I would share Antyeshti is the most important, which is burning the ego. The ego is burning us right now. For us to burn the ego. Then if I had to force a second answer, the only way that's going to happen is through Upanayana. Only when you are with someone who knows how to burn the ego, can you burn the ego. This cannot be learned through Google. This cannot be learned casually. Next, Anonymous. When someone takes their own life at such early age, how can we not grieve? Sometimes when you go to a mandir and you go to a pujari and they give you tirtha. Tirtha means taranti anena iti tirtha, that which helps you to cross over fear, death. And sometimes they'll say akala mrityu, which means may you not have an untimely death. Have you all heard this before? When a pujari says that to me, I chant in my mind, Om Namo Narayanaya, because what you're stating is incorrect. It is impossible to have an untimely death. Whether I do it to myself or it's caused to me or I just get old. We all die the moment that we've learned all we can in a particular field, then that field is complete for us. So the body dies and the mind continues to learn in another body, in another field. So dying is a form of graduating. And the final graduation is enlightenment, where you come out of this schooling system. For all of us who are out of the schooling system, doesn't it feel good to not have to write any more exams and study and so on? So when one has this narrative from this knowledgeable perspective, if someone has taken their own life, whether they're older or younger, that was however much they were supposed to learn. Sometimes the lessons are shorter, sometimes longer. And another narrative is, I'm going to try to personalize this. If Vivek died today, all of the people who are live or virtual, I would want you to be happier. Which means you cannot grieve. You have to carry on with your responsibilities. If you grieve or become irresponsible, then what was the point of our relationship? Yes. We want people to follow that which is helpful for them, so we should follow that. So for someone who's taken their own life, they probably would want you to carry on and to be happy. So we should do that for them then. And that's why so much toughness is required for us not to look at this from our perspective. Very much when someone is aging and dying, we're not sad for them, we're sad for ourselves. Next. We have an elder who says that a widow in the family cannot participate in kanyadan for her daughter. How to appease both sides. Complicated. The higher perspective here is to understand that kanyadana is not to be taken literally. That's highly illegal. I can't donate my daughter. Kanyadana is where one generation is understanding and appreciating that they've had an opportunity to care for this generation. So let's just take Vivek is fortunate he got to care for Vyasa. And now Vyasa is continuing with his life. Who is that message for? Vivek and Vyasa. There's no sense of possessiveness there. In dana, you can't be possessive, correct? So that would be the higher perspective, in which case, whether one's spouse is alive or not, all of that becomes less relevant. Another perspective is, if my wife died, so now I'm a single parent, it would make even more sense for me to be involved with that, correct? Already I have one less family member. I should be more active with this. And even if we spun it the other way, if I died, then Sheila should have that opportunity to do that. She would be a widow in this case. The lowest perspective is, whoever is more stubborn, let them have their way. You have your way inside. Because you can't change a stubborn person. Why create negativity? Inside, you have this agreement with your child, and you do this internally then. Okay? If possible, dissent. So for the record, so that there's a lineage of education. Next. As a female, I had bhagya of Upanayana at 14 and understood it, sort of. All the rest of the samskaras were extravagant and wasteful. So now, unlearn them mentally. All of the samskaras have a purpose beyond the extravagance and waste that you're mentioning. That's all less important. You should unlearn that, and you probably have. Do you remember what you ate at your Upanayana? Do you remember what someone was wearing at your Vivaha? No, you don't remember those things. So you probably have already forgotten those. But for each of these samskaras, try to use the table that I've shared. This is the action. This is the attitude. That should carry on with you. And also, let us make our samskaras simpler. When I teach people about Upanayana and Gayatri Mantra, there's so much involved in Sandhya Vandana, which is why nobody does it. But if that could be simplified, focusing on the right actions for the right attitude, then people will do this. Yes? Who's responsible for that? Don't point fingers outside. We're responsible for facilitating this culture. Next. Should we be prohibited from eating onion, garlic, non-veg during festivals? You should have the maturity to make that decision for yourself. My children are 5. They don't have that level of maturity. But when one's, let's say 18, you've come back from the ashram, it's less about do's and don'ts. Sanatana Dharma is not about do's and don'ts. It is about engaging in that which is right. A lower perspective to this. Yes, anything that makes you more tamasic, like meat, anything that makes you more rajasic, like onions and garlic, then an utsava, festival means utsava, that which lifts you up. You're supposed to be inspired, then that means you have to let go of that which is weighing you down. But I am qualifying this for advanced seekers. None of this context matters. But an advanced seeker is also honest, okay? We're all thinking, yeah, we're advanced seekers. They're honest about if they're advanced or not. Next. Not getting invited to rituals for superficial reasons like period, divorce, gender, caste are hurtful. How to address this wired need for inclusion? Good question, and good way to ask this question too. Number one, the way I would approach this, if someone's basis for me not being invited is such criteria, it's better that I'm not there. It's like you're inviting me to your birthday party because you have to. Then I may as well not come. It's better for you and better for me then, correct? It's like some people who come for discourses when I'm here live. I'm not talking about all of you. From a lower perspective is for you to, I'm not saying create your own rituals, but to organize rituals that are more inclusive so that that becomes the norm then, correct? I shared this yesterday. Like when we ask our kids what clothes you want to wear, we just tell them choose whatever color you want. We don't say wear this shirt with a truck on it because you're supposed to like trucks. They like trucks because that's their vasanas. You think I like trucks? I didn't impose this on them. Neither did Sheila. It's just their vasanas. So my point here is you nurture an open environment. And the more people who participate in that, that will be a change in culture. How many of you, by show of hands, feel that you're engaged in a work culture that is unhealthy? Too much gossiping and politics and competition and so on. Some of you don't have your hands up because you work together. That's yes. Now remember, that building doesn't have a culture. It's the people who create a culture, correct? A jungle doesn't have a culture. It's the people who make that jungle polluted and so on. So whenever I'm talking about culture, please don't externalize this, that it's built into the ether. It is people who create culture. If you look around, in our community, we have such a disciplined Zoom culture, isn't it? Punctuality, timing, names. That culture was not created for many other communities. But we created it. The people here created it out of fear. Next. Are these certain days when hair wash and cutting nails are prohibited? A lot of questions. First of all, chuda karana. So no more hair washing, okay? I've yet to come across that. See, now what you're probably interpreting is what my mother told me when I was younger. Don't cut your nails at night. And I just did it because I would rather not even have to think about that. You told me to do this. I don't even want to talk about this, so I won't. But when I started to cut my own nails, why people didn't cut their nails at night is because they didn't have electricity. So when you cut your nails, where did it go? Into your food, into your bed, into your house. But now with electricity, you can see that. The best place to cut your nails is outside, because even if you try to control it inside, it still gets in different places. See how practical the samskaras are. So there's not a specific day or time that you shouldn't do this, okay? And especially your hairs and nail are dead matter. Who cares? Focus on that which is more important, your mind, how you're thinking. Next, why are male, female separated at the temple? My answer to all of your questions now is the same question. Why are they separated? I'm asking you, why are they separated? We have a temple at our ashram, and males and females are not separated. You can go where you want. You can do what you want. You can touch the murti. You don't have to touch the murti. It's your parent. So if that's happening, the idea is that in a very traditional sense, males are attracted to females, females are attracted to males. So when they're close together, they're thinking about each other instead of Bhagwan. But to me, that's impractical. I'll tell you a personal story. When we were at the ashram, Aarti was at 6:30. And at 7 o'clock, Ramayana class started. This was all at the mandir. And one day, a very talented Bharatanatyam dancer, she got permission from Puja Swami Tejomayananda to dance in front of Bhagwan Jagadishwara. So as soon as Aarti was completed, a big square was created for her to dance in, like string was set up. And as this was being set up, there was a student, a batchmate of mine, he was literally throwing his elbows to get a front seat, like to sit right beside that string. Like me at a Pearl Jam concert, he was like that at this Bharatanatyam performance at a mandir. I think you all knew that Pearl Jam's tour was postponed in 2020, and I had tickets to 2 shows. For one of those shows, I had tickets to the pit, which means first come, first serve, all to the front. And those shows were scheduled for May of 2020. And when they were being rescheduled, I was really praying that it wasn't going to be May of 2022, because I have a lot of traveling to do. And so they're scheduled for September 6th, 2022. The first day my kids go back to daycare. That night, I get to go to see Pearl Jam, potentially front row. So back to the Samskaras. As soon as she started performing, she's offering her art to Bhagwan. He looks down and says, Shiva, 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 Shiva. And I just wanted to tap him on the shoulder. Do you think you're never going to see a girl in your life? When you see a girl when you're driving, Shiva, 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 Shiva. See, it's impractical, correct? So more than trying to control the context, just control your own mind. That's why, again, I come back to our ashrams, and soon enough, we'll have an ashram here in Cleveland. We are going to have one murti, not a buffet of murtis. One murti where you should learn to see in that oneness, allness. Why should we have to cater to so many different contexts? It only encourages division. Yes? So much culture can be changed with this knowledge. Next, can Acharya Vivekji elaborate on what it looks like to feel like I am dead to the world? Very simply, you do not depend on the world for anything that is fundamental. Functionally, you still have to buy groceries from the store and fill up gas at a station, etc. But fundamentally, no one can add or take away joy. That's what it means to be dead to the world. You do not act for fulfillment. If you're acting, it's out of fulfillment. Okay, and in a very relative way, simple. One who is dying has a very simple lifestyle, correct? So you have a simple lifestyle. Next, is there a samskara we can practice daily as a family, especially for teaching our kids? That's a fine question. Some freedom walks ago, I read to all of you a chapter from Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh. And that chapter was on the breathing room. Please try to go back to that recording if possible. Every home, especially where there's more impressionable minds like yours, the questioner, have a space in your home that is an infinity space, where in this space, nothing is done other than practices to feel free. So deep breathing, reading, writing, reflecting. That way, whenever someone is feeling stuck, they go there. But that will only happen if you do this proactively every day. Then they will resort to that when they need it. Everyone should have that. Even if you live in an apartment, there should be a portion of your apartment that is this infinity space. Do you remember in the Ramayana, when Raja Dasharatha comes back from announcing that Bhagwan Rama will be the next prince, instead of going to his palace, where does he go? To Rani Kaikai's palace. And where is she? The anger room. She's in the anger room. And that's really cool, is that back in the day, they had rooms where you could be angry. At least it's captured there, right? When you get an x-ray, it doesn't leave that x-ray area. So anger should be the same way. And I always remember what Guruji has shared. He said, now every room is the anger room in everyone's home. I'm angry in the bathroom. I'm angry in the garage. I'm angry in the hallway. Okay. I am going to be very brief now. Why do women in India cover their head with sari when men are around, especially in little towns? Because they watch too many Bollywood movies. That's why. To be coy. The real reason why one's head is covered, whether male or female, it is symbolic of the grace in one's life. In a Gurudwara, it's the hand of the Guru that's on your head, so your head is down in a humbling way. In Haridwara, it's the hand of Hari. So this is why we cover our head in sacred circumstances. When you get prasad, you bend your head down. Suppose I'm going to Swami Chinmaya for prasad, and I'm like this, give. Right? The whole body language has to be one of surrender. I had a miscarriage. As a result, I do not get invited to baby showers. Why? For so many of these questions, I feel bad. I feel bad that you have to go through this. I feel bad that our culture has come to this point. The interpretation of our culture has come to this point. Do you remember one workshop I had asked all of you to put your hand up if you've had a miscarriage? I'm going to do it again. How many of you in your family, your immediate family, you've had a miscarriage? Look at how many hands are up. When I said it, I told you we just had a miscarriage. That was in December in the Happiness series, if you remember. That was not just a few months ago. So everyone knows someone close who has had a miscarriage. And when we talk about it, then such exclusivity will go away then, correct? So these workshops, again, are important. Another perspective is, if someone is holding that barrier against you, talk to them. Maybe they just don't know. Talk to them, maybe you can open their mind. If they're still not open towards that, then you don't want to be in such a circumstance. You know, our children are pretty active. If we went to someone's home and someone was judging them, I wouldn't want my kids to be in that home. That's why I travel by myself. Right? I'm doing that for their protection. Why would I want them to be exposed to that? That's how they are. That's who they are. So in the same way, if someone is judging you for this, why would you want to expose yourself to that? When there's so many other communities who understand and appreciate and are inclusive of whatever fate has created for you. I can't enter the forest because the adult kids are still reliant on me. I'm still taking up my role at work. Who should be younger? The adult child is not adult. I think that question is coming live from here. It's true. People are maturing later. I mean that mentally. So it becomes harder for caregivers to become free. That makes complete sense. We're laughing because life is serious. That's why we're laughing. See, I find it to be a very poor perspective that if you're serious, that I should be serious too. It just gets compounded then, correct? If you're serious, I should be light then. That's me respecting you, not disrespecting you. That's why we're laughing. The purpose of your life is not to look after your children. The purpose of your life is to be a child of your original parent. You follow these samskaras fully, and the original parent will care for your children whom you think you're caring for right now. Okay? Almost done. What is dakshanta? It's not dakshanta, it's dikshanta. Diksha, anta. Diksha means initiation. Anta means the completion of initiation. Dikshanta is the valedictory address, the final message. And lastly, when we say empower someone, means I have a power to empower, then what is Vivekji's thoughts? That's correct. You have to know your own power to be able to find that in another, to help them discover that. That's why self-development is most important. Long dialogue. But no more questions, which is great. We don't have to go to meaningful mornings to continue with our questions. Okay, give me your mark. Your mark yesterday was from rating how well you are following these samskaras. So tell me your score. 100 is awesome. 1 is awful. How are you doing? $65, $82, $34, 60. I'd shared with all of you, I believe for Samavartana, that on your birthdays, be self-reflective. I believe that was the tactile perspective. Whatever score you've written today, every birthday, make sure that number is higher. So at least 3 times a year, you should have this self-check. And that these numbers are growing. And to help you youth and adult samskaras are there. Can you all hear me and see me clearly? Okay. How many youth and adult samskaras are there? There are 7. Yes? Is that correct? 7? Okay. Mondays are now Akshara Abhyasa. What's Tuesday? Upanayana. What's Wednesday? Samavartana. Thursday? Vivaha. Sundays? Antyeshti. 7 samskaras, 7 days. So now every Monday for the rest of your life, Remember Akshara Abhyasa, the absolute, the relative, the tactile. That's your reflection adventure of the year, the reflection adventure of your life. Completing our workshop, I want to share with all of you 3 really important opportunities to continue to shift from ego to spirit. The first is our Plant One for One campaign. Our community is aspiring to plant 1,000 trees. If everyone here just planted 20 trees, and that's not a lot, we would complete that. If you don't have the physical sense to plant 1 or 20 trees, every dollar you donate leads to a tree being planted. If everyone here donated $20, we would be able to plant 1,000 trees. As you're considering Plant One for One, remember what I had shared about Yudhishthira and Karna. Live lightly. The next is our Contentment Challenge, which starts tomorrow. I already have my mala with me, fresh mala. I have my fresh journal I'm excited to write tomorrow morning. Why a mala? So that when I'm driving, I'm doing this too. Safely on the highway, okay? This is a really, really, really beautiful challenge, perhaps the best that our community's ever come up with. And I hope that you feel the same, how helpful this will be for your day to become more contemplative. And this one is not publicized, but it will start on April 16th, is Running from the Mind. April 16th is Hanuman Jayanti, so our running community will start on that day. You'll see registration for that shortly. My gratitude to all of you. We don't get to think about the Samskaras often, and you've given me this opportunity. My gratitude to our dynamics facilitators, Rupa, Shankarji, and Nina. And my gratitude to our crew for looking after the pre-work and the post-work. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shantihi, harihi om shri gurubhyo namaha, harihi om. Be safe, be sound, be serene, be joy.